Welcome to Bridging Chicago, a podcast that aims to connect our listeners to Chicago's business, community, cultural, and charity leaders. Brought to you by the SATC Solutions Center. You can connect with us on Instagram or Twitter, where our handle is @BridgingChicago. For more information, including our email, visit us online at satcsolutions.com. Be sure to rate and subscribe to Bridging Chicago on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen to this podcast.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of Bridging Chicago podcast. My name is Joseph Amari. I'm an associate attorney at SATC Law, and I am grateful to be hosted today by Donna Van Eekeren, President and CEO of Springboard Arts in Chicago. How are you doing today, Donna?
I'm doing well, and you?
I'm doing really well. Thank you so much for having us.
I'm happy to be here.
We have a beautiful gallery.
Thank you.
So, Donna, we want to ask first, you're from Chicago originally?
Yes, I am.
Could you tell us a little bit about growing up in Chicago?
I grew up on the south side of Chicago, 7209 St. Lawrence. We all had to learn all of our addresses because, that's what you had to do as a kid. Anyway, so at 8 years old, my parents built a home in an area at the edge of Chicago called Colonial Village. It was right near the river. And at that point, there were lots of young people. The other part was more older people. This one was more young people, lots of kids my age, lots of fun things to do together. And your parents trusted you in those days. I mean, it was come home for lunch, come home for dinner, come home for bedtime. And that was it. And the truth is that you wouldn't have broken that trust.
Right.
Because when somebody trusts you, you don't break that trust. So I had lots of time with friends and also lots of time to explore. And I was always just a little further. I'd go just a little further, and
right.
So we used to live near the Calumet River.
Okay.
And one of the things Mother said not to do, and I did, was go down by the Calumet River because she said bubbles hang out there and I want to see what bubbles look like. I had no idea what it meant. But that was an era of safety.
Mm-hmm.
And I never felt insecure in my entire life.
Sure.
So, yeah.
So how did your parents go about encouraging your passions?
My mom was a church choir director. My dad sang in the choir. We all sang in the choir. It was a small church. And so Dad had a beautiful baritone voice. And my mom could read music and direct a choir. And I had this little kind of quiet, light voice. So I just was the background singer, but we all sang in the choir, and we learned to play together, work together, be together with the choir. And my dad was an elder in the church, so they were very involved with church activities.
Mm-hmm.
And so most of the kids that I grew up with went to the same church, went to the same school, and we hung out together. And again, freedom. Nobody worried about where you were or what were you doing. And it was always like, if you didn't feel safe someplace, you could knock on a neighbor's door. Never give it a second thought. It was a wonderful time to grow up.
Right, and that sense of community was probably part of that safety.
Absolutely.
Right.
That's wonderful. But my mom was a painter. She loved to paint. And she was talented. She never sold her work or anything like that. She did it because she loved it. And so when I kept trying, but I didn't have the talent to do it, but it was a great fun thing to do, a great release. So, but I really feel like one of the great things about art is people understand culture through art.
Mm-hmm.
So what we paint, what we see, we understand the culture of the people that are there. If you look at any foreign country you walk into, then you look at their art. You see their culture on the walls there. So that's okay. After years of collecting, and I ran out of wall space, so I decided to start a gallery.
Right.
Besides that, I really feel very strongly that unrepresented artists need to have a place to show their work, to sell their work if they want to keep working.
Absolutely.
So, and that was the whole mission behind this place.
Sure. So how did you go about finding unrepresented artists, and how did you go about establishing yourself as a place where they could find a way to display their work?
I hired a consultant, and she had been in the arts field for a lot of years. And so she found the artists for me. The only trouble was we found 40, and that's far too many to represent. But we decided to have 3 shows, and break them up into 3 shows, and then see what's out and see what. But in the meantime, they had an opportunity, and they could say on the resumes that they were represented by a gallery.
Right.
So it was a win-win. Anyway, because I have loved the arts all these years, every place I go, I can't stay out of art galleries. I can't stay out of art museums. So it's really wonderful to see that kind of creativity.
Absolutely. And some with art you can find with an unrepresented artist, but even local galleries, you can find such beautiful work that doesn't make its way to the mainstream. It's, you have to go out and find it rather than it being presented to you.
Some of it is that artists really have trouble selling. I mean, most artists are really not wonderful salespeople.
Right.
They need to be represented by somebody else telling other people how wonderful their work is.
Right. So of the artists that we have displayed around us, could you tell us about any of them, how you came into contact with them?
The whole show up here are French artists. And David Gista, whose work is just in front of us, found them for us. He's from Paris and from Chicago. You have to hear in each place. So he brought all of his work in for us to hang.
Okay.
And this is the newest singular show. And then downstairs are artists that we kept from the 40 that we started with. And not all of their work is hung down because it can't be, they don't have enough room for all of it.
Right.
So we just,
So we have, this immersive art culture in Chicago, where there's so many artists. Do you think that starts at a young age? How do you think that young people are able to express their passion? What steps do you think that they take to find success in art?
I honestly don't know for sure, but my guess would be if they have a good art teacher in school or somebody else who recognizes their talent. Because I think most people don't realize how talented they are. Some people look at it and they know how good they are. But it takes a long time for any of these artists to get to the point where they're hung in the gallery.
Right.
So I would say, to me, the arts in the schools are critical, absolutely critical to keep the art going. And and the funds.
Yeah, and fostering their creativity, I think it pays dividends in every field. Opening children, up to different ways of thinking, different, expressions and understandings. That comes to pay dividends in all areas.
It does. It really does, because you do think differently when you have to. It's like writing. If I have to write something, it makes a whole lot of difference how I think about it than if it's just coming out of my mouth.
Sure, and the storytelling that can go on from art, you can look in and see someone's journey, someone's passion, see their representation of the world as they see it. I think a lot about Van Gogh when he went through his yellow period. It's so interesting that he, no one else saw the world in this way, and yet he was able to, demonstrate to others how he perceived what he was seeing. And so that was a connection that it can't be made necessarily through a description, but through art, people can come together over it.
That's right. I think it's easier for people to visualize it. So I can't speak French, I can't read French, but if I see a French artist's work, I can say, isn't that wonderful? I wonder where they came from. And you can still go back and research why they did what they did, but it talks about different cultures.
Sure. So what was the moment that you decided, I want to pursue opening an art gallery? So before this, you worked in a completely different field, is that correct?
Yes, I was the CEO of Land of Frost Lunch Meats. I've been with the company, 50 years, I think. I mean, it was, how old am I? No, not quite, maybe 40 years, 45 years, whatever it happened to be. I was with the company forever. I married my first husband. It was family business. When he passed away, I took over. So, and I doubled the size of the company under my watch. He was an extremely creative person. Yeah, anyway, so that's how I started with art. It was package design. So I would look at a package and I would say whether I think you're going to pick it up or not.
Right.
Now, why would you be attracted? What colors attract? What styles attract? Making sure that it's readable kind of thing, without losing the character. Anyway, that's
Sure. So those skills that come from what might seem more of a corporate world actually transition pretty well into
right.
having an art gallery.
Right. Yes, it did, and it was a fun. I've always wanted art. The other thing is, I've traveled a great deal. I've been very fortunate, and any place I went, I'd pick up a piece of art. I ran out of wall space. It was one of those things. None of them. I don't know that any of them will be worth a penny more than I paid for them. But I look at things that are on my wall, saying, I remember being there. I remember the person I talked to.
Absolutely. I think I feel similarly with some of the photographs I've taken in the past. It's you look at something and you can preserve a moment in your life and be brought back to that moment and think about the circumstances and how they've progressed from that moment.
That's
so
right.
That's like kind of an intrinsic value that, like you said, maybe it doesn't accrue in monetary value, but in terms of what it means to you, it might only grow as you hold on to it.
Yeah, I don't know how anybody could be without art on their walls, but as I say, I overdid it. I mean,
well, now you got plenty of space.
Well, yes, I do. I have plenty of space to hang, and it's also an opportunity for unrepresented artists to have a place to hang. That's important to me.
So when you speak about unrepresented artists, what do you think are some of the impediments for them getting into galleries in the current structure of,
I honestly don't know because I don't know this industry as well as I should. But usually, a well-known gallery will have a cadre of artists that they use regularly. But they probably go through a number, like I have. Go through a number of them and see what sells, see what the market looks like, see what your customer looks like. Whoever's running it better have a good eye for what is good art. But one person may love Van Gogh and another person may love Picasso.
Right.
So you kind of have, and those are, even if they're not well-known names, you don't know what's going to sell until you've had the experience. But most of the galleries that are around, I think they're around for a long time. I'm not sure how many galleries there are left.
Sure. And was there anything specific that drew you to the north side of Chicago to open up your gallery? Was there a community of art here that drew you?
I hired a consultant. It was one of those things I didn't know what I didn't know. So when I hired her, and she found the space for me. And I'm not sure this is the best location for what I'm doing because I'm just not sure that we don't get a lot of walk-in traffic.
Right.
There are other places in the mall, in North Michigan Avenue, someplace like that, we get a lot of walk-in traffic. So I'm not sure how this all came about, but I didn't know what I didn't know.
Yeah. So how do you go about advertising the gallery as it's situated?
Oh, we put ads in local papers. We do. I've got the team that works on getting that done for me. Use Instagram. Use all the different mediums that people who might want to buy art, and you just keep plugging away.
Right.
We get parties. So, I've had a couple of good parties where I would invite an organization to bring their friends in to have a party here. And actually, I just got a note from somebody who brought their group in, and she said, I'd like to buy some of your, and I went, yay, that works.
Perfect.
Yeah.
That works out.
Mm-hmm.
So when you were going about setting up the gallery, were there any challenges you didn't anticipate?
One thing I didn't think as clearly as I should about with the stairs, it's limiting. And unless I put where it adds something to carry somebody who's handicapped up the stairs, that's probably the only thing I hadn't thought about when I did this. But generally, I did have to do all the relight the whole place. So all this, I did total rehab.
Right.
So all this lighting is new, and it's all for an art gallery, and that was one of the things. It just didn't have proper lighting. It's got a very old-fashioned ceiling, which is interesting. I made sure it showed.
Oh, I didn't notice that.
Yeah, it's great. It's very old-fashioned ceiling.
It's very open to kind of like it allows someone to kind of get lost in a piece and then look around and see what is encompassing and get drawn in after that.
Yeah, and you gotta use a lot of white walls to take balance, but then the gray ones kind of offset it a little bit. So when you've got pieces that are more white, you're better off with putting them on a little bit of color with gray.
Right. Was there anything in your time at Land O'Frost that kind of inspired your journey? Is there anything anyone shared with you that you've been able to use in this chapter of your profession?
I learned business, and I know how to run business. I ran the business for years, so that was probably the biggest learning. And of course, when you're in the packaged lunch meat business, you have to make sure your packaging has eye appeal, and you do a lot of promotion in the industry, ads and so forth. And yeah, that was a good learning experience for me.
Absolutely. When you worked in packaging specifically, were the artists that you worked with, did they have outside interests as artists, or they typically focused on design?
Mostly it was design.
Okay.
Yeah, they were packaging companies usually. We had a couple of designers on the outside who would do things, but generally they were, that was what they did.
Right. Right. So going back, did you go to college in Chicago?
Actually, I graduated from high school when I was just 17.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, right. Well, the trouble is you don't know what you don't know at that point in time. And my counselor said to me, what do you want to go to college for, your MRS degree? And I went, yeah, do you believe that? And I wanted to go to college so bad I could taste it. My parents couldn't afford to send me. I would have to do a scholarship. I had all those things I didn't know how to do at 17 years old.
Right.
So I ended up going to Northwestern night school and working full time, and never got a degree because I did that, and then I started having family, and I started running businesses, and just but I got what I needed to know from a knowledge perspective.
Sure.
By doing that, but no degree.
Yeah, and that experience probably is giving. I mean, a degree tries to prepare you, but when you're immersed in it like you were, I'm sure that you learn so much more very quickly, having to make those decisions in real time.
Yeah. And I always took classes. I was one of those that if I didn't know something, I always wanted to know it. So it may have not been a class that was going to give me credits toward a degree, but I was always going to school. I didn't know how not to go to school. It was just kind of fun.
Absolutely.
I always need to know. It sounds like you do the same thing.
Absolutely. I love learning. It's the opportunity to take something that I'm not so familiar with and become a little bit more familiar with, and then maybe it's not something immediately applicable, but eventually I start to see, as I build up that knowledge, it comes up in my day-to-day life. Like I learned pretty quickly in law, how pervasive it is and how unaware I was of, it's everywhere. But when you're not knowledgeable about it, you don't quite perceive it in the same way. And I think you said something earlier, when you go to a different country, you see the art and it immerses you right away. You can find the culture right away.
Yes.
I think that's so true. I mean, especially I've traveled a lot domestically, and going to different cities, like the art has always been something that drew me in. Like I went to San Francisco, I went to San Diego, and there was such beautiful art everywhere. It was always a little bit different. It kind of represented life there. So what are some of the favorite cities in America that you've traveled to?
Oh, I've been to San Diego. Let me think. I would say Seattle, San Diego. I like the West Coast. It's got, I like the cultural background of the West Coast. When my kids were little, I did a lot of we got a little cottage, things like that. So we did a lot of driving driving vacations, and as long as you could stand four little kids in the back seat. That's it. But anyway, that was, So I can't say, I do like the West Coast. I love New York, one of my favorite cities, because I like the art, I like the culture, I like the knowledge that you get there. I have friends who go once a year with a couple girlfriends and go to New York, and we see some plays. I love the arts in all forms. I'm involved with Shakespeare Theater, I'm involved with lyric opera, and I just love to go to play. I love creative people. And so when you see people who are performing on the stage, and you look at what they're doing, and how just marvel at how they do what they do. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
What's been your experience like with the Shakespeare Theater? I've been a few times and I was blown away by what they put on.
Barbara Gaines is phenomenal, isn't she? I've been involved with that one for years. I started with them when they were in their little theater, and now they're in the big theater. And it's less cozy, but you get more people in there to see things. But she's a tremendous talent.
Yeah. And what's your role with them?
I've been on the board for years.
Oh,
Yeah,
it's very cool.
yeah, it's fun.
And the lyric opera, do you do it?
I'm on the board for there too.
Oh, wow. So you
Yeah.
total background.
Oh, tell the opera was, I used to say that was someplace I could hide because you have to concentrate so completely when you're listening to the opera. So for those 3 hours, nothing else in my world mattered. That's what I did. I listened to the opera and I just love being there. Just love it.
Absolutely. That's I've been to the opera a few times as well, and that's unbelievable. The range that they have, the storytelling is incredible. Like I didn't know walking in that I liked it as much as I did walking. I was like blown away.
Yes.
And like you said, it moves you. It kind of brings you to a different place, and I think that can help people reflect. I think generally the arts can help you reflect and learn about yourself based on your reactions to art.
Exactly right. It's been a wonderful experience for me. And it was interesting because I started with Claire shortly after my first husband died, and I'd always loved the music anyway. I'd grown up with classical music. So walking in there, I went, I can hide here and I'm running a big business that way. I can hide here for 3 hours. And that's all I'm thinking about. Because generally my mind's going to, how can I sell the next product? How am I going to do it? Yeah, run a business.
Right. That corporate wheel kind of always role of management, you know that your business relies on you being actively thinking about it. So sometimes I bet that can be mentally exhausting.
It was not for me just because I enjoyed it so much, but it got to the point, but I didn't realize that it was beginning to exhaust me until I was going to the opera and going to places where I could focus on something other than the business.
Right, find that escape.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So what do you see for the future of Springboard Arts?
Entrepreneur. Okay. So from my perspective, when this show goes to the end of the year, have to make decisions about whether we take the current artists that we have and spread them out, or if we find another show. It's kind of, it's fluid at this point. But we have enough art downstairs to fill the space.
Right.
And I have to look at it from a business perspective, what makes the most sense. Do people always come to the same place? If you want a piece of art by so-and-so, then you're going to come here for that art.
Right.
Then you have to decide if those names are strong enough that they will carry, that pay the bills.
Right. The business side of having a gallery.
Right.
Do you have any artists here that you find people coming back for?
David Gista is one. That's his work. I've got a couple downstairs. Ed Hinckley, who's my cousin, his work sells pretty well. But his wife makes these vases. They're gorgeous. And again, that's something people will pick up and they can have one small piece in their house.
Right. It's a memento. Okay. Donna, what is something that you wish you had learned early in your career?
I think we all feel we have to be good at everything. I learned that it's okay to make honest mistakes, as long as you admit them and correct them. Nobody's perfect.
Absolutely. And sometimes the pursuit of perfection can actually leave us somewhat stymied.
That's very true. It's very true. Besides, when you mistake, you always learn from it.
Absolutely.
So you make a mistake and you step back and say, why did I do that? I wish I hadn't. And you learn not to do it or something similar the next time.
Right. I think you can learn so much from coming up short from a goal that you have and then all of a sudden realizing, well, what was it that I did that I could do differently?
Right.
And I think about, it's somewhat cliche, but that Einstein quote that's the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results.
Right.
I think that's the same thing. If you do something that doesn't work, that's completely fine. It's when you keep trying that and you keep having the same result and wondering why. It's to learn from the path you took and see if you can change it to get to that end result.
And the other one is, if you don't learn from the past, you may be forced to repeat it.
Absolutely.
I always like that one, because it's a lot of the past knowledge when I already repeat.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Donna, thank you again so much.
Yeah.
Is there a best way for our viewers to connect with Springboard?
You can get us on www.springboardarts.com is our web address, and our address here is 1910 West North Avenue. Love to see you come in and do some learning.
All right. Well, thank you again so much. This has been another episode of Bridging Chicago. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Bridging Chicago, as produced by the SATC Solutions Center. Nothing contained in this podcast shall constitute financial, investment, legal, and/or professional advice. No professional relationship of any kind is created between you and the podcast host or guest. You are urged to speak with your financial, investment, or legal advisors before making any investment or legal decisions. Furthermore, the opinions expressed in this podcast are not necessarily the opinions of SATC Solutions Center, SATC Law, or any of its employees. This podcast is created by the hosts and guests' individual capacities. All opinions on this podcast are or have been rendered based on specific facts, under certain conditions, and are subject to certain assumptions and may not and should not be used or relied upon for any other purpose, including but not limited to, or use in or in connection with any investment purposes or legal proceeding.